Okay. So Abid Khalid,
Present.
Al-Johara, Alma.
Present.
Present.
Who was that? Is it Al-Johara?
Johara.
Sorry?
Yes, I'm Al-Johara. Present.
Thank you, Al-Johara. So Abid is,
Me too, doctor.
it's Alma, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Aya,
Present.
Dareen,
Present.
Dai, Dai Abdullah.
Present.
Okay, then we have Eva, Fatma,
Present.
Ghazal Fadi,
Present.
Ghada Fahad,
Present.
Ghada Khalid,
Present.
Ghada Muhammad,
Present.
Ghadir Abdul Aziz,
Present.
Ghaida Muhammad,
Present.
Haifa,
Present.
Hana,
Present.
excuse me, Hadil,
Present.
Hind Sultan, Huda Alainzi,
Present.
Jude Rami, Jude, Lina Hassan, Lian,
Present.
Lian Anas.
Present.
Okay, and then we have Diana is there, Diana is there. Maisa. Maisa Anas. Okay, Munira Badr,
Present.
Noor,
Yes, present.
Noora Khalid,
Present.
Noora Basam,
Present.
Noora Samir,
Present.
Noora Shaya,
Present.
Ragad Walid,
Present.
okay, Rani,
Present, doctor.
Rawa,
Present.
thank you, Razan, Razan
Present.
Fahmi, okay, Reem,
Present.
Reem Hamad, Ruwa Majid,
Present.
Sara Umran,
Yes,
Sarah.
present.
thank you, Sara Ahmad,
Present.
Shatha,
Present, doctor.
Wajdan,
Present.
thank you, that's it, Lena, okay, anybody else? Farah, you know that you always need to send an email before attending the class, right? Because what I taught in 8 a.m. section, because I finished the class, right? This lecture is a repetition of what I explained to you yesterday, right? So you attending this class, it will not actually help you, right? So what you can do is you can attend the class tomorrow from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Okay. So whatever you have missed in the morning class, you can attend that tomorrow. Okay. So that is why it's always a good idea to send me an email before if you want to like to attend the class. Okay. Yes. So that's going to help you, not this club, because this has the same information what I taught to you yesterday in the morning class. Okay. Thank you. You can join us tomorrow, 8 to 9. Okay, Farah, no problem. Okay, so that was about it. Give me a minute. Did I mark you present? Yes, I did. Okay. Are we all ready? Okay. So in the last class, we spoke about the transport of oxygen in the blood, right? We said that 98% of the oxygen is transported in the form of oxyhemoglobin, isn't it? And only 2% of oxygen is dissolved in the plasma. That's what we learned in the previous class, okay? Today we'll talk about the transport of carbon dioxide in the blood. How is carbon dioxide transported in the blood, okay? So if you see here, it's like 70%, like majority of the carbon dioxide, which is transported in the blood, okay, is transported in the form of a, what? In the form of bicarbonate ion, isn't it? As you can see here, the majority of the carbon dioxide, what's wrong with it? Grab a pen. Okay, so we saw that the majority of the carbon dioxide, okay, in the blood is transported in the form of the ion called as a bicarbonate ion, okay, and this bicarbonate ion could be dissolved either in the blood, okay, in the RBC or in the plasma, okay. So I'm going to talk about it in a while again. So the carbon dioxide throughout our blood is present like usually in the form of a bicarbonate ion, okay. Other than that, a large percentage of it, almost 23% of it, okay, is transported through the hemoglobin, or it binds to the hemoglobin. And you might think that, how is it possible? It's the oxygen which binds to the hemoglobin, not carbon dioxide, right? We learned that last time hemoglobin has 2 alpha chains and 2 beta chains, and in the middle it has a iron to which the oxygen binds. Okay, so iron is the place where oxygen binds. Okay, but carbon dioxide binds to a different place called as the protein. Okay, and we know that every protein has an amino group and a carboxyl group, right? So carbon dioxide binds to the what? Amino group of the protein. Which protein? The 2 alpha chains and the 2 beta chains. Okay, and thus it forms a compound called as a carbaminohemoglobin. Right? So 23% of the carbon dioxide is transported in the form of carbaminohemoglobin. Okay, so not a large percentage, but yes, I mean better than 7%, which is transported in the form of, which is dissolved in the plasma, and that's how it is transported, right? So very small percentage dissolves in the plasma, large percentage, okay, it becomes bicarbonate, and we'll discuss the reaction in a while. It becomes bicarbonate ion, that's how it's transported, either in the RBC itself or in the plasma, okay, and then a small part of it attaches itself to the protein part of the hemoglobin, the amino group of the hemoglobin, right, and forms the carbaminohemoglobin, right? Now, let's discuss the reaction, okay? So what happens as the carbon dioxide enters from the tissues into the blood, right? That's the place where carbon dioxide enters into the blood, right? So in the internal respiration, right? Because the respiration within the tissues is called as an internal respiration, right? So as the carbon dioxide enters, okay, into the blood, okay, so most of the CO2, okay, enters the RBC, okay. So this carbon dioxide in the RBC, combines with the water, and there's an enzyme present within the RBC called as a carbonic anhydrase. So in presence of this enzyme, it's converted into carbonic acid. Okay, this carbonic acid splits into 2, forming what? Bicarbonate ion and the H positive. What happened with this? What's wrong with it? Wait a minute, ladies. Something happened to my. Okay. No, on the escape one. Minimize, yeah, right. Okay. Okay, so this is the bicarbonate ion, right? That's how the carbon dioxide is transported in the blood, right? So what happens once we have this bicarbonate formed in the RBC, okay, then it has two choices. Either it can stay in the RBC and move through the blood, or it also goes out of the RBC, diffuses out, and then it's transported where? It's dissolved in the plasma, right? And in the plasma, you can find carbon dioxide in the form of the bicarbonate ion. Sorry? Bicarbonate ion. Yes. So as I said, 70% of it is transported in the form of the bicarbonate ion. Okay. I'll show you the reaction. See, there are many other things also. We call it a chloride shift, Haldane effect. But all those things are not in your book. So I'm not going to discuss it more because the chapter is very small. It's not very long. It's very short. So we need to finish the chapter as well. It's not there in the book. So there's no point of explaining it. Right? So this diagram is not in the book. I'm just trying to show you here what happens as the carbon dioxide from the tissues, okay, enters into the blood vessels, okay. So what happens? This carbon dioxide binds with the water within this is within the RBC, right? In presence of carbonic anhydrase, the enzyme is present within the RBCs, forms the carbonic acid, okay, which gets dissociated into what? Bicarbonate ion and the hydrogen ion. Okay.
If there is some missing from this equation, there would be in the blood something disease or in every blood we will have this carbon dioxide.
Yeah, that's how it travels. That's how it travels. Right? So then this bicarbonate ion can go out into the plasma. Okay, it gets dissolved in the plasma. So this is like the 70% of carbon dioxide travels in this form. Okay, and I don't want to go into details. This bicarbonate ion goes out, chloride comes in because we want to balance the negative charges, right? For the chloride shift. So I don't want to go into all those details. Even that's not required. Okay. Online people, is it clear? How do we get the bicarbonate ion? Any questions about it? It's very simple. Right? Okay. Now it had traveled from the tissues, okay, or from the, at the end where we have the tissues, it entered into the blood, okay. From that part, this carbon dioxide has to be delivered where? To the lungs, isn't it? And in the lungs, it has to go out, right? Then we exhale it out, okay. But for the carbon dioxide, it has to go out of the blood, right? As I just now said that, it's transported in the form of the bicarbonate ion. But when it reaches to the lungs, do we exhale out bicarbonate ion? We exhale out what? Carbon dioxide, is it? So I say, I'm not giving off bicarbonate ion. I'm giving off carbon dioxide, right? So what happens the moment it reaches to the lungs? Okay, what happens? This bicarbonate ion, okay, it again enters into the RBC. Okay, because it has to be now converted into what? It has to be converted into carbon dioxide, isn't it? So if you see here, it can again enter where? RBC. Okay, and now the reverse reaction. Okay, earlier we said the carbonic acid gets split into bicarbonate ion and hydrogen ions. Now the reverse reaction, the same reaction but the reverse order, right? So now this bicarbonate ion will bind with the hydrogen ions, form what? The carbonic acid, right? Carbonic acid will be, as I show you, let me show you the reaction. Look at this. Now we'll go in the opposite order, isn't it? Let me erase this first. Why doesn't it say erase all the ink? Oh God. Okay, it has to stay there. Okay, it will not be erased. Okay, now the bicarbonate ion, which was dissolved in the what? In the plasma, it enters into the RBC. Okay, in the RBC, it combines with the hydrogen ions, forming what? Carbonic acid. Okay, and this carbonic acid then will release what? Carbon dioxide and water. We got our carbon dioxide back, but where? When it reached to the lungs, right? And now what's going to happen? This carbon dioxide will be again released from the RBC, okay, in the plasma. From the plasma, it will diffuse into the alveoli, and then from the alveoli, it will diffuse out into the atmosphere.
Doctor, we should memorize this.
Yeah, this reaction is there, of course. This reaction is like everything about the carbon dioxide, right? Is it clear to everyone, online people? Any questions about it? Everybody? Okay. This is it. When the bicarbonate ion, this is near the lungs, right? Near the lungs. So bicarbonate ion again enters into what? RBC, okay? And what happens? It combines with this H positive ions, right? Gives off what? Carbonic acid. This carbonic acid, because the enzyme is inside in the RBC, it has to go inside there, right? And it converts it into water and CO2, right? Water will stay there. Carbon dioxide will come out into the plasma. So now we have CO2 in the plasma. From here, it will be, this is a respiratory membrane, remember? This is the squamous epithelia of what? Of the blood vessels. This is the squamous epithelia of the alveoli. This is their fused basement membranes. If you remember, we spoke about the basement membranes fused to each other, right? And then from CO2, it's thrown out in the lungs or in the alveoli. And then from that, it goes into the atmosphere. All clear, okay, Ruby says all clear. Okay, so that was about the transport of carbon dioxide in the blood, okay? And now what would you expect? Would you expect the concentration of carbonic acid to be higher in the arteries or in the veins? Online people, you as well. What is the answer to this question? Where can you expect more carbonic acid? In the arteries or in the veins? Of course. Isn't it? Because in the arteries, it's the oxygen which is in more concentration, right? So then as soon as the oxygen is given off at the cellular level, at the same place, the carbon dioxide will move into the blood vessel capillaries. And if you remember the diagram, the capillaries unite to form venules. Venules unite to form the veins. So veins will have of course, so carbonic acid will be rich in the veins. Okay. So then the internal respiration, we already spoke about it that day. Internal respiration, if you remember, I told you what is the basic difference between external and the internal respiration. External would take place between the alveoli and the blood in the lungs. That's an external respiration. And internal is when the oxygen is now traveling through the blood in the form of oxyhemoglobin, right? As it reaches to various organs, right? This oxyhemoglobin is releasing the oxygen, right? And oxygen is what? Oxygen is diffused into from the blood, it goes into the tissues, unloaded in the tissues. And in return, the carbon dioxide is loaded back to the blood. Okay, so carbon dioxide will be taken back now, whereas oxygen will be delivered. So all this happens at the tissue level, at different organs. So that is why it's called as the internal respiration. Okay, so what happens in the internal respiration? Okay, let's say this is the blood vessel. Okay, this one's a blood vessel. What's wrong with it? Okay, So let's say this is the blood vessel. This is the interstitial space, and these are your what? Tissue cells, right? So as you can see here, they give off carbon dioxide. Okay, as you can see here, we had oxyhemoglobin, which was converted into hemoglobin and it gave off oxygen. And now oxygen is unloaded into the tissues. At the same time, the carbon dioxide is loaded where? Into the blood vessel, right? And then what happens? There in the blood vessel, carbon dioxide binds with what? Water, forms the carbonic acid and gives off what? H positive and bicarbonate ion. But remember, this reaction will take place where? In the RBC. Not shown here, but you know it now, right? So this carbonic anhydrase enzyme is there in the RBCs, right? And then that's how it's going to travel, bicarbonate ion everywhere. So in my blood, through the veins, I will see only bicarbonate ion dissolved in the plasma, right? And some amount of the carbon dioxide, as I said, can also attach to the hemoglobin. Right? So some of it, there in the hemoglobin, most of it goes out in the form of bicarbonate ion, dissolved in the plasma, okay? And a very, very small amount of it, can be there in the RBCs as well. So bicarbonate is usually travels through plasma, but some amount of it can remain within the RBCs as well. But what is important? It's the bicarbonate ion. This is a major form of an ion in which you can find the carbon dioxide. And you will see that once we discuss the pH, this forms, this is not very useless thing. Converting carbon dioxide into bicarbonate ion and the hydrogen ions, right? This is an important part of the maintaining pH in the blood. We'll discuss that in tomorrow's class, right? Because, as I said that, it's always a good idea, right? To have some amount of carbon dioxide in the blood, right? Because it forms a very important buffer system in the blood, okay? It contributes towards the maintaining pH in the blood. Because if you remember last time I told you, it's the respiratory system and the kidneys. These two are responsible for maintaining the pH of the blood. We don't want acidosis, less pH. We don't want alkalosis, high pH. We want it to be 7.4, right? And this buffer system, you'll see that the bicarbonate buffer system will play a very, very important role in the pH control, which we will discuss in the tomorrow's class. Any questions? All good? Online people, any questions? Are we all okay? Okay, all good. Okay. Alhamdulillah. Okay. So, as a result of these changes, venous blood in the systemic circulation is much poorer in the oxygen. We just discussed that, right? Because it's very rich in the bicarbonate ions or in carbonic acid, right? This is the same reaction. Again, the same reaction. Again, the same reaction. So this reaction is not in your book. I just brought it here to show you that it actually takes place in the RBC. Oh, sorry. Where did it go? Okay. So this one you don't need to prepare for the exams or the midterm. This I just showed in here to show you how it exactly takes place in the RBCs. Okay. Then this is just one slide. You just go through it. Nothing to explain in this slide. It's just telling you about what are the non-respiratory gas movements. Okay. Various refluxes, reflux action in our body. Like for example, you cough and sneeze. Why do we sneeze and cough? If there is any bacteria, virus, any particle which has entered our respiratory system. So sneezing is the best idea to throw it away, to remove it away from the body, right? Innate immune response, right? And so is the case with the cough. If there's something stuck here, or if we have mucus which has trapped a lot of bacteria, a lot of germs, right? So you constantly start coughing so that the mucus can come out, isn't it? So this is a natural refluxes, right? Crying is an emotional mechanism regulated by the limbic system of our brain. Okay? Laughing, similar to crying, emotional response. Okay? And hiccups. Hiccups are, when your diaphragm, okay, is basically irritated. We have a phrenic nerve, you remember the phrenic nerve, which supplies to the diaphragm, okay. If this nerve gets irritated, okay, so we are sometimes when you excessively, constantly eat without, taking a pause in between, okay, you along with eating or drinking, you inhale a lot of air, okay, that irritates our nerves in the stomach, right? So because of that irritation, what happens? An abnormal kind of sound is created from our body. Okay, that's basically when our here we have the larynx, right? So larynx is closed, okay, and this and it stucks the larynx, and as it opens up, so an abnormal sound comes out like something like this, right? So this is basically irritation of the phrenic nerve. But we don't have a well-developed mechanism. This is like, the postulated, yes, this might happen, because your phrenic nerve is irritated, right? And your gastric nerves are irritated. Okay, there's no specific reason that, okay, why you can actually get the hiccups. Like this is the only reason.
Hey, doctor, there's something, someone hungry and the stomach,
Growling sound.
yes.
We'll talk about that in the next chapter. The same growling sound is there in the next chapter, because we're going to talk about their, why we get hunger pangs. That's in the next chapter coming up on Thursday. We'll discuss that, because for that you need to first of all know the anatomy of the stomach. What is ruggy, how it expands. So when it's empty, what happens? So we'll talk about that. That's not part of this. Stomach has to do with it. The noise is coming from the stomach, growling of the stomach. Right? And you might have seen that if you're hungry, okay? So growling, where it might come for first 2 hours. So this is a response created by, your body that, okay, please eat something. So you'll see that if you ignore that, you don't eat anything, after every 2 hours, it will start kind of, growling again. Then you'll see that after maybe 8 to 9 hours, if you don't eat anything, it's going to subside. It doesn't wake you up. You understand? You might feel hungry, but growling is more active, in the initial, when you're hungry or when your stomach is empty. Okay, then you reach at a point then wherein there's no growling, even though you might be hungry, but there's no growling. So we'll talk about all that in the digestive system. Okay, and yawn is like, very deep. We take a lot of air inside. Very deep inspiration is the yawning. Okay, just go through this table. Okay, nothing much to explain here. Just read them. Okay, what is this? The definitions might be there. Okay, and again the same thing. The way we spoke about. You might have seen that when we go to a doctor. Okay, and if we have a lower respiratory tract infection, okay, he might keep his stethoscope, right, on our chest or on the back, right? So what is he trying to listen? Okay, he's of course not trying to listen to the heartbeats, right? So he's trying to listen to the bronchial sounds or the vesicular sounds. Okay, bronchial sounds are basically produced by the larger passageways like the trachea and the bronchi. When the air goes in the trachea and the bronchi. So the way we spoke about in heart rate, right? And we spoke about how the sounds labdab are produced, right? Similarly here, when the air basically passes through the trachea, through the bronchi, right? It creates a kind of, a noise, which a doctor can actually hear oscillate through the stethoscope, okay? Other than that, there are also soft sounds. They're not really loud sounds, okay? They are very softer sounds, which is, he really needs to pay attention to hear those sounds, okay? And those sounds are basically, they are trying to see whether the alveoli is being what? Inflated or not. So very soft sound which inflates our alveoli. So God forbid if the person has any pneumonia or has any pockets formed, the pus pockets formed. So the sound will not be the same. So only doctor can differentiate between a normal soft sound and now the abnormal one. Okay. So by just oscillating, he can say that there is some infection in the lungs. He can make out all that, right? Because he can differentiate between the softer sound and the normal sound, right? So again, they're very, very important, because you know that two things are very important. If you have a patient in front of you, right? So in order to find out whether this patient is alive or not, either you will oscillate what? His heart rate or his breathing rate, isn't it? So these are the two important vital signs which tells us that yes, the patient is alive, isn't it?
And
So pulse is the same thing, the heart rate. We
but
discuss.
I think the process is more deeply.
You did not, do you remember when we discussed the pulse rate in the cardiovascular system? When I said that pulse rate is the reflection of the heart rate. It's a mirror of your heart rate, right? So if keeping hand on the heart is more difficult than keeping here in the radial artery. And I told you, we can oscillate, we can actually feel the pulse in many other arteries, but this is most the easiest one, right? So pulse and heart rate is similar.
And some doctors, they take if they want to see patients alive or what, in the neck.
Yeah, which artery is there? Here? Yeah, which artery is there? You tell me. We studied cardiovascular system. Ladies, which artery is there on the neck? When doctor would keep 3 fingers on the neck, the artery which supplies blood to the brain. Carotid arteries, right? Yes, so he will keep these 3 fingers like this, right? Because it is again, the superficial artery over here, a very important artery, right? Yes, thank you. Yes, absolutely, it's a carotid artery. Okay, so now we'll talk about the control of respiration. Okay, so there are 2 types of controls. One is the neural control, another one is the non-neural control. Okay, so what is a neural control? Neural is, of course, with respect to the brain, right? Nervous system. How does your brain control the breathing patterns? Okay, so it's not like you're breathing by itself. For example, if you remember, we spoke about the muscles, right? Which help in inspiration. Can you name those 2 muscles which help in inspiration? One is the muscles. Ladies, name the muscles which help in inspiration. Inspiratory muscles, 2 important inspiratory muscles. Intercostals, very good, Haifa. Is it external or internal? External, very good, intercostals. And the second one was? Very good, Rawan. Haifa. And the second one was? Diaphragm. Very good, running. Yes, this muscle, right? If you remember, we spoke about it. When you inhale in, diaphragm goes down like this, right? And your external intercostals, they help in raising the what? Rib cage. Right? That's how the air from the atmosphere goes into the thoracic cavity, right? Yes. Thank you, Raneem, Haifa, Rawa. Right? So these muscles do not contract by just themselves. The way we say that we have nervous system which activates a skeletal muscle at a neuromuscular junction. So of course, the same thing is here again. We might receive a stimulus from the brain, right? Which is basically dictating these muscles, intercostals and the diaphragm, that please contract, right? Then only we are able to respire, inspire or expire, right? So the neural centers in the brain, if you remember last semester, chapter number 7, we said that it is the medulla, the brain stem, right? And the pons in the brain stem. These are the 2 important respiratory centers present in the brain, which control our respiration. If you remember when we were discussing nervous system, I told you, God forbid, if you hit the cerebrum, a person will not die. A person maybe he cannot speak because we have the speech centers there. he will be emotionally challenged or intellectually challenged. He might not be able to write, or he might have a paralysis in the muscles because it's controlled by the cerebrum over there, right? In the cortical areas. But if you hit a person here in the brain stem, here, right over here, khalas, the person can die then and there. Why? Because we have an important nuclei in the brain stem, in the medulla oblongata and the pons, right? Which are respiratory centers. Okay, if you hit them, then khalas, your muscles for the respiratory system, they will not be able to contract. A person might die then and there. That's why you might have seen that, oh, never hit a person here, never hit a person here, right? So because these areas are very, very, not only breathing, they also control the heart rate as well. So all the vital functions of our body are here in the brain stem. So that is why we need to be very careful with it. Is it clear to everyone? Should we start discussing medulla? Okay. In the medulla, remember that we have two types of respiratory centers in the medulla, in the brain stem. Okay. One from the front side, you have some neurons. Right? If this is the brain stem, what's wrong with it? Okay, let's say this is the brain stem. Okay, so from the front side of it, we have some neurons. Okay, we might have some neurons. Okay, and those group of neurons will be called as the ventral respiratory group. What do we call them? Ventral respiratory group. And then after some time, we'll talk about another set of neurons called as a dorsal respiratory group. Again, they are the neurons present dorsally, like posteriorly, where? In the brain stem. So these two neurons, they're not only two, the group of neurons, collection of neurons, collection of cell bodies of the neuron. Okay. So these cell bodies are very, very important, which are called as, for example, ventral respiratory group. Now, what is the function of this group, these neurons? Okay, they contain inspiratory neurons as well as the expiratory neurons. What does that mean? That means they contain certain neurons. In this group, you will have some neurons, okay, which are what? Inspiratory. What do you mean inspiratory? That means they will control which muscles? The external intercostal muscles, right? We just spoke about it. And they will also control the diaphragm. So that means these neurons, inspiratory neurons, when they fire, when they send impulses, because of their firing, because of their depolarization, repolarization, your external intercostals and the diaphragm is able to contract. Control of inspiration. But then you again have some more neurons which are called as what? The expiratory neurons. Okay, which basically allow the muscle, which are like they have inhibitory function. They do not allow the contraction of external intercostals or the diaphragm. They allow them to relax. Because if you remember, I told you when you normally breathe, right, you do not need any muscle to contract. Last class, right? We said that you just need the external intercostals and the diaphragm to relax. Automatically, the ribcage will come back to the normal. The diaphragm will go back up like a dome-shaped muscle. Okay? So these neurons are present where? In the ventral respiratory group. Right? They have a control of the respiration, this group. Okay? And some of the hypotheses, they say that we also have, remember in the heart we said we have pacemaker cells, the SA node, which can generate its own impulses, right? Similarly, there's one hypothesis, they say that, okay, medulla, especially this group, ventral respiratory group, right? This group, okay, can stimulate itself. They're, self-excitatory. They get, they get excited by themselves. They don't need anybody's help to get excited, right? So sometimes they're called as pacemakers of our breathing, of our respiration. Do you all understand, ladies? What is the function of the ventral respiratory group? Any questions about it? So, right, this is the main center. Ventral respiratory group is the main center, which has a control over what? Over the respiration. Right? Any questions about it? So, and it's like this ventral respiratory group collects the information from other sources. Okay? It collects information from other sources and then regulate the breathing patterns. Right? So it's like the way we spoke about SA node of the heart. Imagine, if you remember, we said that if there's no SA node, which is a natural pacemaker, okay? So heart cannot have a basic rhythm of about, 70 to 80 beats per minute, no, right? So same thing, these neurons are called as what? The basic pacemaker neurons of our breathing. Without them, it's not possible that we can breathe in and out. Okay. Any questions about it? All okay? Now you need to know these smaller terms. What is eupnea? Okay. Eupnea. Eupnea means what? Eupnea means normal breathing. Like if I breathe 10 to 15 or 10 to 18 times per minute, okay? So it's like called as the eupnea, right? So your normal quiet breathing, as I said, that is controlled by this group, ventral respiratory group, okay? And hyperpnea, hyper is, above. When you breathe, for example, what? If you're doing any exercise, you might breathe faster, okay? That is called as the hyperpnea. So this is hyperpnea, excessive breathing. Okay, when you have a panic attack, or God forbid, when you're doing any kind of exercise. Okay, so then is apnea, A-P-N-E-A. Apnea means absence of breathing. Person is, oh, he has apnea. He's not breathing. He's dead.
This is no breathing, right?
Apnea means no breathing. Khalas, person is dead. Apnea, no breathing. Eupnea, breathing, normal breathing, silent breathing, quiet breathing. Hyperpnea, hyperventilating, excessive breathing. Are we okay, everyone? In the blood. So, okay, so we're going to talk about that in the hyperventilation for tomorrow. So we'll stop over here because dorsal respiratory group is something because I need to interrelate with many other things. Okay, so anyways, tomorrow, as I said that we finished earlier, in my, I finished this chapter in my morning class, 8 a.m. class, and we finished pretty much earlier. So we had time, but then I told them we'll start the digestive system on Thursday for everybody. Okay, so we're going to stop over here. Tomorrow we'll start with the dorsal respiratory group and we'll finish the chapter tomorrow. Okay. So tomorrow we'll discuss about the role of carbon dioxide, how it helps in maintaining the pH of the blood. We'll also talk about the hyperventilation, hypoventilation, and about this group in detail, how it collects the information from the rest of the body and sends it to what? To the ventral respiratory group. We'll also talk about tomorrow about the chemoreceptors. What are chemoreceptors? Okay, how they help in sensing the amount of, the pH, the amount of carbon dioxide, oxygen in the blood. We'll talk about that as well in the tomorrow's class. Okay, and what are stretch receptors? Okay, what is their function? Okay, so that will be all discussed in the tomorrow's class. Okay, ladies, any question? Do you have any question? Anybody? We did the attendance, right? Yeah. No questions? So, you know, the last working day is the 21st April, right? And there will be a combined midterm and the final exam. So the chapters which we did not take for the midterm 1 and midterm 2, okay, that will be counted in the midterm 3.
Doctor, how many chapters do you take?
We have half of the lymphatic system, and then we have this respiratory system, we have digestive system, and let's see if you will be able to finish the urinary system or not. That's like a different thing, because I want to keep last week for the revision.
Yeah.
And that's also very important to keep last week for the revision. Okay, and please remember this Thursday we don't have a lab. We have a lab next Thursday for respiratory system. Okay, thank you everyone. Bye bye. Have a wonderful day ahead.
Doctor?
Bye bye. Yes.